Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, and Puss in Boots: The Last Wish are all incredible animated films that dominated the conversational zeitgeist for some when they burst onto the scene. Movies that beyond their amazing visuals, storytelling and scope feature narratives that tackle interesting and universal themes that anyone on the planet can watch and connect to. The role of fate and destiny in our lives, how we deal with grief and the ticking clock of our own slipping mortality. If you've been watching my channel for a while, it's pretty safe to make the assumption that I like animation. 2 of my videos are me talking about Smiling Friends and Don't Hug Me I'm Scared. 2 great animated shows, both created by unique, interesting voices, pushing the medium of adult animation forward, and proving that going against the grain of its peers garners success. Which isn't as much of a new thing as I perhaps made out. They're not as much the special little ducklings swimming in an ocean of mediocrity. The movies I've listed earlier have been amazing films to come out in the last year or so, delivering compelling stories and becoming pioneers after incredible success. Across the Spider-Verse in particular has changed the game, creating a bombastic cinematic experience that is attracting every demographic to go see it. But with all 3 of these, there exists a weird invisible boundary that pops up whenever you bring them up in conversation with certain people. Talk about going to see the new Spider-Man and say it's the animated one, you're gonna have that one guy that says,
"What kind of sick pervert are you? The cartoon one? Made for babies? What the hell is wrong with you?"
Animation throughout its recent history has long been regarded as a medium primarily catered to children. Bright, colourful, simple cartoons often overshadowed by live-action films in terms of mainstream recognition and critical acclaim. Where films shot by Steven Spielberg about his mum and dad's divorce are receiving claps, woos and accolades, animation is relegated to the baby table where everything is generalised into one big ball of slop you can lump everything into. A thing for kids, entertainment you can slap on to keep them sedated, or things that don't require much thought or investment beyond surface level. Amidst introspective, thought-provoking films that use animation as a medium to express something more different than live action, like Anomalisa, it gets shoved into the same category as Shaun of the Sheep or Inside Out. And no shame to my man Shaun, I'm not dismissing the craft and effort involved in making stuff like that, but it does speak to an overarching industry and audience-wide sloppy pig food. For most, it's a simplistic art form made for simplicity's sake and therefore warrants much less respect, despite the incredible range of diversity and artistic achievements within the realm of animation, that would be seen and beloved if these funny little biases didn't hinder its recognition as a legitimate form of storytelling, harming the greater industry overall. Right now, animation's core demographic and who studios choose to pivot towards overshadows the sheer variety of tones, genres, and narratives present when you actually remember that the gruel you've been given has been blended from all manner of tasty, yummy ingredients. I am Remy the Rat. I taste and see all the flavours put into these projects, and I know that there is more to these dishes than being their surface level qualities. You wouldn't look at an entire medium or genre and compartmentalize all of its beats into one thing. It's a blatant double standard. All superhero movies aren't boring, let's go save the world stories, they're deceptively expansive. For every lame, bland, formulaic one, you get a The Batman or a The Guardians of the Galaxy. Horror isn't all jump scares and gore, it can be weird and atmospheric and make you scared just by the way it uses its framing. But animation isn't a genre, it's a medium for storytelling just as legitimate as any other. It isn't limiting, it isn't something that's inherently a simplistic and lesser art form. It's expansive, capable of telling any story in a way live action has no hope of measuring up to. And the prevailing sentiment that it is lesser than live action, that it's a medium defined by its simplicity, is one I find that's very ignorant of animation's obvious merits. I'm of course gonna keep it a buck though. When you look across the wide expanse of successful animated shows and movies, 99 times out of 100 they're ones that are made of a young audience in mind. So I'm not going to pretend the misconception that it's a medium intended solely for children isn't somewhat grounded in reality. Because historically it has been most of the time, unless it's an animated sitcom like a Simpsons or a Family Guy. As far as anyone else is concerned, that's all its mainstream reputation has to show for itself. This wasn't always the case though. Back in the day, animation was just treated as a medium for entertainment to the same degree as regular old filmmaking, as Nickelodeon theaters were selling out tickets left and right for young couples going out to watch one of those famous motion picture shows they've heard so much about, marveling at the novelty of how such life was brought to something inanimate like a drawing on a piece of paper so seamlessly and expressively. And as animation kept going, techniques and standards also improved, as Disney began pushing out not just shorts like Steamboat Willie, which was the norm at the time, but also full-length feature films like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, which had never been done before Walt Disney. Although initially intended to be for a wide audience of all ages, the market began to shift more towards families and children, and so in the spirit of the market, Disney began pivoting specifically to that demographic, leading the rest of the industry to follow suit. Which isn't unprecedented or even bad. Studios will inevitably go with what's more popular and assured in the current climate. It's the nature of things. And the last few decades have been a living testament to that. We had the expressive and vibrant hand-drawn 2D era, and then with the rise of Pixar and DreamWorks, we saw a complete departure from that style altogether, with a preference given to 3D computer-generated stuff attempting to replicate an image of reality and fidelity. As animation began to divorce itself from the mainstream and focus more on its core audience, that allowed the perception that it is a lesser medium to begin to grow and sprout thorns. That because something is intended for younger audiences, it is therefore inherently lacking in substance or things worth viewing under a more critical or emotional lens. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the people making these movies have that mindset too. Just making stuff with the attitude that it's for kids and therefore they don't have to try very hard. But I think about myself growing up, where I was obsessed with animation, watching it in as many unique forms as I could across several different tones, genres and places, wherein many shows and movies had a profound impact on me and shaped my taste and sensibilities as an adult. For every funny episode of Regular Show or Gumball, I'd be given an emotional gut punch in the form of a story about a man gradually losing his grip on reality over time until he's left almost unrecognizable to his loved ones. I watched Clone Wars, an animated Star Wars show on Cartoon Network, that instead of being a hollow advertisement for this franchise, served as an essential expansion of George Lucas's mythology, which, for every boring story arc, had some very powerful themes and ideas being explored. Specifically when it came down to anything depicting these soldiers of war questioning their existence and the war they're fighting. I grew up on a steady diet of Pixar films like Ratatouille and Up, movies about the spirit of art and creativity in spite of class and about learning to move on past the great loss left in your heart after a passing. These all may be things on the surface approachable to kids. It's animated, the posters have a rat in a chef's hat and an old man with a flying house, bird and a fat Asian kid. But get past the talking rats, dogs, flying houses and the fat Asian kid, there are stories that are universal to the human experience, which transcend boundaries of age. Anyone can watch and resonate on some level of what they portray. If you're a creative who finds himself belittled and discouraged from a certain field because of things out of your control, you can relate to Remy in his struggle. If you're someone who's going through the aftermath of losing a loved one, you can relate to how hard it is to move on and fill that void left in your heart. The fact that they're animated doesn't hold them back, it elevates them, allowing for these conflicts, themes and narratives to be told in a way that is more abstract and expressive. In live action, it's a harder sell to make you care about and follow a rat that can cook. If you were doing a story like Up in live action, it invites you to not play around as much with your premise and add in things like the flying house as a personification of holding onto your grief. The thing that should be prioritized for animation is not trying to sell reality itself, but a heightened, exaggerated and surreal adaptation of it. You go with whatever fits for the story being told. You look at real movies, like the one about the disgusting fat fuck eating his life away, living the typo lifestyle, and its visuals denote that the movie is grey because it is sad, and a narrow aspect ratio because Charlie is confined to a house and cannot leave his door no more. Something like The Whale is portraying reality and its look in a way that fits thematically and tonally. Likewise, a lot of animated films and shows do the same. More often than not, these movies weren't animated by mistake. It wasn't an accident, someone didn't flip the wrong switch. It's an intentional choice that suits the story being told. For this video, I've gone back to and revisited a lot that just serves to show how much its visuals really serve to elevate the story they're telling. Would Up's opening really be as impactful if it wasn't in this style? Would the emotions it's trying to convey hit as hard if we didn't see the shift in the animation? Would it be as powerful if instead of showing how these character models aged and transformed, we just saw a couple of actors being switched out? I really don't think so. Art style is a powerful thing. When something has a look so unique that matches with its theme and premise, there is no competing with it. It does that thing I said, imprinting something onto your mind, marrying storytelling to an aesthetic beautifully. There's often a belief spread that the best animation is one that manages to replicate reality well, mainly spread around by Pixar ironically in their continual pushing of graphical capability. And Pixar for a while was the poster child of success, so hyperrealism was and is something a lot of studios try to aspire to. Push the boundaries of technology and create seamless environments that almost look like they were actually filmed on location. But live action or doing what's realistic isn't a benchmark for legitimacy, and that idea being perpetuated is what leads to animation as a whole being being seen as lesser and more uninspired films being made. Disney remakes suck, because what's the point in making the same movie again where the whole gimmick is it's copying homework with an ugly coat of paint slapped over it? By removing the art style and movement from these movies, they sacrifice the emotion and ironically the humanity from it. We have living, creepy proof that animation does enhance a story and is an essential part of making it work emotionally. These lions have thoughts, feelings, and personality. These ones I want to see poached and turned into a rug. There's different strokes for different styles. I'm a broken record here, but it's a medium, not a genre. Shows like Over the Garden Wall, Adventure Time, and Clone Wars aren't outliers. They're not exceptions to some cosmic rule. They're just good TV shows using animation that takes advantage of its medium. Not limited by their approach, but elevated. Ones made with kids in mind that don't talk down to their audience. They present their stories honestly and faithfully, which almost anyone can watch and appreciate as good storytelling. Infinity Train, Over the Garden Wall, and Avatar: The Last Airbender are genuinely among some of my favourite pieces of media, and two of those have very little in the way of appreciation. And adult animation is the same as well. There's a whole world beyond Rick and Morty, Family Guy, and The Simpsons that fully exploit their format without much in the way of restraints. Primal is a beautifully animated showcase of those strengths, presenting jaw-dropping animation and heart-wrenching storytelling, all with effectively no dialogue, simply relying on its visuals to portray 1,000 different meanings. BoJack Horseman is an amazing drama centered around depression, anxiety, our pursuit of celebrity and purpose. All some really grim existential topics handled with a lot of weight and seriousness. Moral Oral, Invincible, Midnight Gospel also fall under the category of amazing adult animation that is so much more than what many typically presume it to be. Looking at adult animation, many just think you're going to get animated sitcoms and not anything more than that really. But there's a big great world of possibilities that needs to be supported. Outside a couple of anime films, the most well-known R-rated animated movie to come out in cinemas was Sausage Party. Which, say what you will about it. Good, bad, doesn't really matter. It didn't do much good for the animation industry. As part of the movie's joke was that these were cartoons, swearing, being crude, saying Seth Rogen jokes. Which I don't think is particularly interesting and just pushes the stigma that with a few exceptions, animation is a simple baby medium for kids and isn't worthy of the same level of legitimacy as live action. To the point where a big component of the humor is that it's being subversive of tropes and preconceptions of that bias. Adult animation has been unfortunately buried due to a lack of interest or significant success of more mature storytelling in the box office. You can find some really good things, but let's face it, nobody watched 9, and it sends a message that movies like that are doomed to obscurity. The significance of the 3 movies I mentioned at the beginning of this video is that they each shattered audiences' presumptions about animation. They used every weapon in their arsenal to deliver the best stories they could that appeal universally to everyone of any age. The Last Wish isn't just a funny movie with the talking cat from Shrek, it balances several different tones and messages, all treated with the utmost seriousness. The movie is about Pose literally escaping from death, the actual personification, not that one, not this one, but this version of death, and not once is the idea of that conceptually played for laughs. Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio is made by probably one of the most beloved and influential directors of recent years, switching mediums towards not only animation as a general concept, but stop motion, a method that has lost a lot of popularity in recent years and outside of Aardman has been historically unprofitable. But here it's used to great effect, serving as a powerful method of conveying this story, doing so with a mature angle, reinterpreting one of the oldest stories in a way that's fresh and innovative. And Into the Spider-Verse completely changed the industry when it came out, taking away Disney's crown as the animation powerhouse and encouraging other studios to take a page out of its book. To be experimental with its story, to not shy away from mature themes and moments, and to not run away from the medium's strengths when embracing their potential. Puss in Boots 2, as well as several other movies, have taken direct cues from Spider-Verse's example, straying away from the hyper-realism CGI Disney and Pixar popularized and more towards stylization. And now with Across the Spider-Verse, it's once again changed everything, as people from every walk of life are gonna go see it as one of the big blockbuster events of the year, and it cannot be understated how big of an achievement that is and how much that's going to change things. Across the Spider-Verse isn't a film where its medium was interchangeable. If it were in live action, you would have a film that would be nowhere near as good and just does not vibe with the format. Spider-Verse wears its strengths on its sleeve, having different parts of the film being characterized through variations in style, color, movement, using every strength and advantage I've highlighted animation has throughout this video. The stigma around animation was able to form because people voted with their wallets. Something came out that had never been seen before, and since then everyone has been trying to ape the success of whatever is in the zeitgeist. Now Pixar is becoming a shell of its former self. Disney's crown is starting to rust due to age and new voices are beginning to hog the spotlight. So go out there, vote with your wallets, encourage more movies like these to be made, and be the change you want to see. Animation has always had legitimacy, but now people are starting to take notice of its potential and what can and can't be done. Watch Spider-Verse, watch Primal, rewatch shows from your childhood with stories that stuck with you, and remind yourself of what animation is and what it can be. Animation is limitless. It isn't a crutch or infantilizing. It's art that has an ability like no other medium. And it's time that the greater entertainment industry understand that potential.